In this session, we're going to look at associating code with the GUI we've created in a previous tutorial. So far, we have some text boxes. We have an input text box that's been identified as TXT input box. We have a dynamic output box identified as TXT output box, and we have a start button that's identified as BTN start. One of the first things I'm going to do is just copy BTN start. You'll find that I actually copy a lot of the instance names from the GUI layer to the ActionScript layer. Now that I'm on this layer and this has been actually set up correctly and I'm happy with it, I'm actually going to lock the GUI layer. This stops me from actually selecting objects and moving them around the screen. I'm then going to go up to my AS3 layer and I'm going to open up my Actions panel. If you don't have your Actions panel, just go to Window and select Actions from the pull-down list. So I'm going to open up my Actions panel, and the first command that's going to go in there is stop bracket bracket semicolon. Now this tells the playhead to stop. So if there's more frames on your timeline, it actually stops that repeating and the flowing of the playhead. The next thing you need to actually do is put in your developer comments. I'm not going to put any in at this point in time for the duration of the video, but you understand that they need to go on the top. We need to have our global variables. We also need to have our event listeners. Now our event listeners also call functions. So between global variables and event listeners, we need to put in functions. So this is just stubbed out our code, and we've actually got some sections to write in. Now the first thing we need to do from our GUI layer is actually write an event listener for our button start. This is important because we need to be able to click the button start, take what they've written in the input box, and then display that in the output box. So let's go through how we develop this code. So let's start with BTN start. So BTN start needs to have an event listener, so we need to add an event listener and place a bracket on that. Now the important thing is, add event listener should turn blue. If it doesn't turn blue, then it's incorrect. Blue words are reserved words, such as stop and add event listeners, which means I can't use those blue words as a variable. So that's really important. We need to then add what sort of event listener we're adding. We're adding a mouse event. And so the mouse event, we need a particular method of the mouse event, which is actually the click, and that's all written in capitals. And then from that, we need to call a function, and we can call the function whatever we like. I'm going to call it fmain, and then put a bracket and a semicolon on the end of that. So when we click on BTN start, this event listener is listening at button start and waiting for a click to occur. So if it hears a click on BTN start, it runs fmain. Now at the moment, fmain doesn't exist, so if I run my program, it'll actually error. So we're going to now create a function. To create function fmain, we need to first of all declare the function. So function, and notice that's gone to a purple color. Once again, that's a reserved word. And then we're going to put in fmain. Now once again, I'm using Hungarian notation. Now the idea of the F is that we know the F is reserved for function. So whenever I see F something, I know it's referring to a function within the program somewhere. We need to then open a brace, and we then need to put in the triggers that call this function. So in this case, we have an event that makes this function work, which is a mouse event. And we can then close that bracket, and then we can open up a brace. Now notice the term I use, bracket and brace. Braces are your curly brackets. Braces distinguish a start and an end of a block of code. The brackets are generally for concatenation. So if you're doing mathematical protocols and things like that. So you have function fmain, and then you have mouse event, and then open brace, close brace. Now before I go any further in my program, what I need to check is that the button that I click on the main screen is working. So in other words, that button is actually going to call fmain, and fmain's working. And to do that, I'm actually going to use a developer window. This is a window that's used for programmers, not for the end user. So when we compile this as a Swift file for the end user, they actually will not see this developer window. And to talk to it, we're going to use a command called trace bracket, and then I'm going to put in main. So you can write whatever you want between the two quotes. This is just some text. So when I click the button, it should say in main. And I know that if it displays this in the output window, in the developer window, I know that the program has gone all the way through to here. So before I run, I'm going to save my work, Command S. And then I'm going to now run the program, which is Command Enter. Now there's been no errors. And now I should be able to click on the start button. The output window is open and says in main. So therefore the button is actually triggering correctly, calling this function and going into here. So now I'm ready to go to the next part of the program. What we'd like to do is take the input from the text box. So when the program's up and looking at us, I can type in the word Marsden, and then I can click Start, and I want to grab this information. So I want to retrieve information from a text box. To do that, I need to declare a global variable. I need to make a container that allows the information to go into. So for our computer, we're going to declare a variable, which is var, and then I'm going to use s, and I'm going to put text. And then I'm going to give it this variable name. So the variable name is stext, and then I'm going to give it a type, which is string. And semicolon. So what I've just declared there, as a global variable in memory, a space called stext. It's going to be a space or a bucket, you could picture it as a bucket, that I'm going to put some information in. And then anytime I want that information, I just call the bucket or the container, and I can get the information out of that. So what I want to do now is place what is in that text box on the screen, out of this text box here, into this S string. Now to do that, I'm going to say that S text is equal to, and now I need to locate what I want it to equal. So I'm heading back to the main timeline and I'm unlocking it so I can talk to the text box, grabbing the right tool. And we're going to be working with txt input box. So I'm just copying that. You can type it out if you like. So I want it to equal txt input box. But we need to be careful because txt input box is actually a text box. So the text box has a font color, font size, if it's bold, italics, if it has a border, it has an XY position on screen. So text box itself has a lot of information, and what I want to use is a method. I want to identify something in particular about the text box that I want. What I want from the text box is actually the text from the text box. So I've used the method .text. So I'm telling the computer, if you read it from right to left, I want the text from text input box and put that into stext. So that's where I want you to put it. So take the text from the text box and put it here. So from that now, we can check to see if it's working by once again using our trace statement. But this time what I'm going to trace out is stext. What I want to see is this text box or this stext, the container in memory, holding the information that I just got from the txt input box. So once again, I'm going to go Command S and I'm going to run my program. I'm going to enter in Marsden and I'm going to click Start. In main, and then it says Marsden. So having a look at our code, it comes from the event listener. It then heads into the main program. It traces out in main, correct. It then grabs the text from the text box, Marsden, stores it in stext, and then we trace out stext, and therefore in our output window we are seeing Marsden. This is very crucial. It shows that our variable is holding the information we want to work with. Some people don't bother checking these sorts of things. They'll write lots and lots of lines of code and then wonder why it's not working. And sometimes they haven't collected it correctly. They might have a wrong misspelled name or they forget the line of code altogether. So now I've got the text, and this section of work is actually our input area. So within here, I can actually put another little comment in and go input. And now I want to put some information out to the dynamic text box on our stage. So txt box output box. So I'm just going to copy that, head back to our code, select action frame 1. And this is going to be part of our output. So at the moment, there's no processing in our program. Now to output what is inside as text, what we're going to do is talk to the text box, because what I want to do is the opposite. Rather than getting information from the text box, I now want to make the text box equal that information. So txt output box dot text is going to be equal to s text, semicolon. So the information is going to be collected from one text box, traced out to our output window, our developer window, and then it's going to place it into the output dynamic text box here. So let's see if that's working. Command S, Command Run. So I'm going to type in Marsden, click Start. There you go. So it's actually jumped from here to here. And in doing so, it's done that through the code by collecting it, tracing it out to the output window, and then putting it in the output box. To prove that it's working, we can actually put in there IT, start. So I'm reading from one text box and outputting to another text box.